Where do you start a story that has no beginning nor an end? When did my falling in love with you begin? Was it when God said, let there be, and there you were? Let me talk specifically when my falling in love with you began. Was it when you said yes to carry me inside your womb for 9 months and gave me life? Was it when you would read and rock me to sleep and sing lullabies and tell me stories of what I could be and who I could become? Or was it when you said be grateful each and every day and you taught me how to put my hands together and pray and say, God is great and God is good. And we thank you for our food. By your hands we all are fed. Give us, Lord, our daily bread. Or was it when you took my hand and walked me to class on that first day and said, remember where you come from. Remember who you are. And you can be anything you want to be. And remember, Mommy loves you. Or was it when I wrote you that first love letter and said, will you go with me? Yes or no? And you said yes. And that was still one of the best days of my life until you said, I don't want to go with you no more. Or was it when we had our first dance and I couldn't quite find the beat, but you smiled and forgave me for my 2 left feet? And as we fast forward, it was you who believed me to a college degree because you could see things in me that I never could see. And because of you, I've been able to go places I never thought I would go, been able to climb mountains I never thought I could climb, all because you believed in me. Or was it when that day you fell in my arms and you looked in my eyes and you said, I have less than 90 days to live because I have given all that I can give. But all I want you to remember is the lessons I taught you along the way. And grandson, everything is going to be okay. Or was it when we decide to say I do, to have and to hold from this day forward, and committed to raising a family together? And baby, we tried. We tried. And while the marriage didn't last, the love still endures. And while I sit here and talk about all the ways in which you have loved me, I know today that you're more than a mommy and a granny and a nanny and an auntie and a sister and a friend. You are so much more. You are the architects of humanity. You are artists and authors and activists and advocates. You are builders of dreams. You are engineers. You are entrepreneurs. You are CEOs. You are pilots. You are soldiers. You are musicians. You are prophets. You are ministers. You are poets. You are photographers. You are authors. You are actresses. You are writers. You are so much more. So on this day, I would like to say, you are a queen who doesn't need a crown or a throne to lead. You are light and liberation. You are freedom fighters. You are power. You are presence. You are purpose. And on this day, I want to say thank you. Thank you. And I come on this day to salute you, to celebrate you, to honor you, to say, I love you, and to pray that just as you have loved us, you will love you. And as you keep rising and rising and rising and rising to the highest manifestation of yourself, know that we got your back. and I will always be falling in love with you.
I'm Daphne Maxwell Reid, and I'd like to welcome you to, what is this, the second, third, fourth, or fifth? To Stacy's Gathering, which is what I call this. Wonderful woman who thinks very highly of all of you. I am honored to be here to serve as your mistress of ceremonies today. A lot of you know me as Aunt Viv from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But I want to start off by saying thank you, Robert Deutsch, for honoring us this morning. He is an internationally known philanthropic leader and an executive leader. And I'm amazed, and I think you all will be too, he has just recently completed a personal quest. Now that's just pushing the limits. He climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Got all the way to the top. Now that's an adventure. Thank you very much for honoring us this morning with that wonderful, wonderful spoken word. And we're going to call you the griot today. Because the griot is basically the village record keeper and storyteller. And today we are here to hear and to tell our stories. Because there's value in our journeys. And telling our stories is how we communicate that value to everybody else. I'm the first one to share a story today. And my story is a story of loss of my mother and the finding of me. So I'm going to read you a letter that I wrote my mother months after she had died, because I was in a bad way when she died. She died too suddenly, and I just had to deal with it. And this was in 2004. I knew that if I started to write this, it would come pouring out. Maybe that's why I hadn't started. Selfishly, I wanted to hold on to her, so I haven't let her go. I clamped her into my heart, and I hugged and hugged and have managed to maintain my sorrow. She'd be pissed. I knew I had to let her go. I accepted the responsibility of being her only girl, her chosen confidant, her special person. I was loved. I was nurtured, and I was always made to believe that I was special. Because I am. I was not only chosen by God, I was chosen by her, my mother. What a presence she was. How I admired her. I love her. I miss her. She left too soon. She did all the right things for herself, yet it was her time to go. The responsibility she gave me to speak for her when she was unable to speak was one that I felt proud to be handed. And I knew I could make rational decisions and follow her wishes should the time ever come. She knew I would. I was her daughter. So I rallied when I got the call. I rallied with my heart clamoring to leave my chest. I jumped on a plane and got to New York. Mother was in the emergency room and had suffered a stroke. I had not seen her for a few weeks before as she breezed in. I had seen her just a few weeks before, as she breezed in from church in her black and white plaid suit and spectator shoes, full of joy, energy, and welcome. Her baby sister was sitting there visiting, and I was in New York for CBS's 75th anniversary celebration. I wanted to see them both, so I jumped in a cab, and I was at home with Aunt Mattie when Mom came in the door. She was radiant with her two best girls there to greet her. I will hold on to that smile for the rest of my life. Right now, I have to write her down so I can get hold of my smile again. Being a strong black woman is something. Yes, you're strong, but you don't always want to be. It hurts to care so deeply for someone and then lose them, under any circumstances. Mom, I love you and I miss you most when I need you. I know you're there, but I can't hug you and rest my head on your shoulder. I had the most perfect mother-daughter relationship, the envy of all that I shared it with. We were a pair from the very beginning. She was my maternal rock and example, my ally, my sister sharer, my teacher, my expector, my mentor, my advisor, my sweet soul companion, my fighter, my soul expander, my mother. I want so badly to hold on to this feeling of loss because something in me knows that when the grief is gone, she will finally be left to go. I must get these feelings out so that we can both go on. Rosalie epitomized joy. She lived every day of her life, and she was responsible to herself and to her family and her community. She chose and created her community. She held down her own in any situation. Any anger was not manifest in words as much as it was in determined purpose. She lived a purposeful life, and her commitments were honored. Her patience was abundant. When she lost patience, she was easily led back to her center. She was opinionated, but for the good of her family and the community. She was steadfast in her spiritual commitments and in the right of truth. She was curious, learned, smart, particular, handy, resourceful, bright, conversant, well-read, classy, beautiful, and strong. She loved the majesty of a stately tree, one of God's great creations. She also loved the songs of the birds, as varied and distinct as the people she shared her life with. She loved trees and birds, and we spent many years sharing photos of them. When she fell from our lives, it was like the falling of our most beloved tree. The more stories that I heard passed on to me about my grandmother's incredible fortitude, the more I recognized these same attributes in my mother and aunt, attributes that I am blessed to possess. Now, writing these thoughts has been refreshing. It has allowed me to analyze the building blocks that made my mother such an incredible person. And I know that I have to honor what she has given me with her life. My responsibility to become all that I can be, a compassionate, strong black woman. I must move along through my grief, release her to pass through her next portal, and pick up the sword and shield of joy and fortitude that both she and I have honed within me. For both of us, I will celebrate life. That's the letter I wrote to my mother. And it released me from a little bit of the grief, but I still hold her dearly in my heart. And you're going to hear lots of other stories today, and we hope that you will realize that all of your journeys are stories that need to be told. If you get a chance, write it down. Get that pen and pencil out, or pen and paper, or keyboard, and write your stories, because this is how we communicate the love that we have grown to have and share with our community. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Now I would like to introduce a woman who has been very helpful in getting all of this done, Ms. Beth Monroe, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of Lewis Ginter Botanical Gardens. Welcome.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is truly my honor to be here today and to welcome you to Lewis Ginter Botanical Garden on this glorious fall day. I hope that you will have the chance to step outside and enjoy some of the garden. I think we are at our peak fall color right now. What a great day to be here. You know, setting is so critical and important in a story. And I was thinking about this recently when I was talking to some guests out in the garden. They were telling me all these wonderful stories about themselves. There was the adorable young couple that asked me to please take their photograph as they were standing next to the love sign that we have out in the garden. And then there was a 4.5-year-old who was so excited to be spending the day with her cousin. And finally, there was the lady that was visiting from out of town. She had come to town for a funeral and she was looking for a place for solace. So gardens can be the setting for joy, for togetherness, and for healing. And it is our hope that this garden can be the setting for inspirational stories for all people in our community. Great stories also need an author. And there is someone who has written the story for Still We Rise and for the reason for us to be here today. She came to us about a little over a year ago and said, you know, we need to do another Still We Rise brunch. And I was so glad the garden could say yes to that. She recognized the importance of coming together and sharing our stories, especially during the time that we've recently been through with all of the challenges with the global pandemic. So won't you please help me to show appreciation and gratitude to the author of today who has written us into this story, Stacy Hawkins Adams.
For being here. I'm just here to give a brief welcome at this point. I will share my story later, but I just wanted to say hello, look out at you all, see your lovely faces, your handsome faces, and welcome you to what is a community gathering today. So as Beth said, this is a collaboration between Lewis Ginter. They've offered up this beautiful space, which is a wonderful space for storytelling, for healing, the same things that we try to do in writing. You can heal through writing, you can find joy, you can work your way through grief, as Daphne mentioned. You can find yourself, find your wings, find your way, whatever that looks like for you. But I just wanted to welcome you because this is also just a day to just take a deep breath and be present. And I think many of you all got my email where I said, we're gonna close the doors at 9:55. They will not be opening again until it's time for the meal. And that was very intentional because we wanted you to be in this space and just be present. No interruptions, no distractions. Just focus on you, focus on your stories, focus on the stories you're going to hear today. And the stories that we're sharing is we're going to share a little bit personal of our personal journeys, be a little bit vulnerable with you because we want you to be vulnerable with yourselves and with your table mates and understand that there's so much power and connection and community when we share our stories. And I thank Robert for that powerful opening because I did get a few emails and questions about why are men involved in this event? We're supposed to be celebrating women. And he showed you why men are involved in this event. I felt it was important to have that voice because we don't walk through this world alone. And as you hear our stories and you hear our journeys, someone is always standing alongside of us. And whether it's a partner, a friend, a brother, a son, a colleague, our photographer is a former colleague from the Richmond Times-Dispatch, Colin, our videographer, is a new partner, whatever that looks like. It can come in many shapes, sizes, genders, and we want men to be our allies because we rise the strongest when we have people's shoulders that we stand on, brothers and sisters. So with that, I welcome you. I'm honored to have you here. I'm so excited about what this day will hold, and I hope that you will keep your programs. They are designed to be keepsakes, so when you look back on this day, you'll not only remember the speakers, but maybe what they said, and there's some note-taking section in the back where you can write your own inspirations. And I have to thank my dear daughter, Sydney, for designing this program for us, so thank you for that, and welcome. So it is now my turn to turn this over to Belinda, who is a dear friend, a prayer partner, a writer, mentee, and she's a local minister, yoga teacher. You may have seen her on local commercials. She's also an actress, so she uses and inspires us through the creative arts in many ways. So Reverend Belinda Todd, thank you.
I just want to take in a breath. Because you look beautiful. You're vibrating, and I'm feeling your vibrations. So give yourselves a hand clap. Every great event consists of interesting people, like our speakers today, and like you, good conversation, and good food. So I won't be up here long because I don't want to stand in the way of your getting some really good food. But I do want to, we've got a little something we need to do first. So I am going to ask that one person at your table become keeper of the gold envelope. Look at your table. There should be a gold envelope. I know my type A people. All right. And please, if you will, open the envelope and pass out name tags to everyone at your table. Until that time, we have something for you to do so you can be active in this storytelling event. First of all, on the name tags, please write your first name. However, don't write it so large that there is not space at the bottom because there is something else to do. Quickly write your first name. So I know you're wondering, how am I going to be involved? We have a prompt for you. So underneath your name, you are going to answer this prompt. I am proud of myself for. I am proud of myself for. Now for some of you that might be very easy, and for others, maybe not so easy. So maybe I will help you out. I'm Belinda. I am proud of myself because today I wore silver jewelry with gold jewelry. Now that may not sound, to some of you, like a big deal, but I'm the kind of person that I color inside the box. And everything has to be by the rules. And so I began to think this morning as I was looking at my jewelry, like, I want to wear that, but I'm feeling like these. And suddenly it occurred to me that I can make my own rules. And so can you. Stacy always says that there's power in our stories. In the church, we say, child, you got a testimony. Now, Brene Brown, who is, she talks about vulnerability, she says that we have to be brave, and we are brave when we tell our stories. But when we're brave, we make others brave. So we're going to chat among ourselves at your table. I'm going to give you an opportunity to write what you are proud of. And you can go as deep as you want. Questions about that? All right. So I've given you an example, and I'm going to allow you now to write what you are proud of. I want to say grace. Let's give thanks for this food. And I just thank you all for coming out today. The grace that I'm going to say today is actually an indigenous American prayer. And I liked it, and I thought it was fitting. So let us give thanks. We thank the Great Spirit for the resources that made this food possible. We thank Mother Earth for producing it, and we thank all those who labored to bring it to us. May the wholesomeness of the food that we eat today bring out the wholesome spirit in each of us. Please take a deep breath and breathe out your gratefulness. Thank you.
Welcome back. We hope you had great conversations with your table mates. And you know what you're all proud of now. So go write it down. This is a writing thing to do here. Right now we're going to hear from our soloist, Miss Morgan Stewart. Morgan, hit it.
Thank you. How are you guys? I'm so glad that we can have this here in Richmond and just have a cool, safe place for everybody. We're usually in competition with each other. You know, we're usually kind of looking at each other like smiling, hi, you're great. But it's not genuine, and there's a lot of genuine energy in this room today. And that's what I can feel us all building that together. I know there's like a lot of things happening, but there's also this really beautiful movement happening, especially with the artists and the creatives. Like we feel it and we feel called to go to it, whatever this is. So thank you for being a part of that. Whether you're a creator or not, you see it, you see the energy, and you want to help it grow and expand. And as a musician, that's what I do. God has blessed me with the gift of music. I don't know why, but I'm very grateful for it. And so I'm also a writer. I always have been, even as a little kid. And I've been through a few things in my life, as we all have, loss and crazy family things and divorce and all these things. And I think that recently, I feel like, always have felt we're on a collective, like we're subconsciously connected collectively, whether we like to believe it or not. And I can feel us all getting really tired. You guys tired? You may feel like you can't, you're like, what? All I got is prayer right now. All I got is my faith. I don't have any advice. Nobody can tell me anything that's going to make this better. All I can do is keep praying and keep hoping that I can get up tomorrow, put one foot in front of the other, and keep putting food in my body so I survive. Make time to eat. Sometimes I wish they put food in a pill because I just don't have time for that. But Stacy has asked me to sing this beautiful song by Andra Day. Did I say that? Andra Day. My bad. And so you get the lyric for this. This is about standing up for not only yourself, but people around you. Let me just tell you the story. This is her story. You can have all the money in your hands, the possessions anyone can ever have, but it's all worthless treasure. True worth is only measured not by what you got, but what you got in your heart. You can have everything. What does it mean? It all means nothing if you don't stand up for something. You can't just talk the talk. You gotta walk that walk. Yes, you do. It all means
speaker is a woman who has adopted a few kids. Her name is Sue Badeau, and she's an author and a transracial adoption expert. Welcome, Sue.
March 6, 1989 was one of those frigid, cold, but brilliantly beautiful days in Vermont when your first step outside takes your breath away, brings tears to your eyes, and makes your nose burn. Winter in Vermont. It was a perfect day for the drive to New York City I had ahead of me. And for this particular drive, I had selected my oldest son, JD, to be my co-pilot. Now, JD had only been in our family for 2 months. As the oldest of 6 teenagers that we adopted all together, he had just joined our family, and even at the age of 19, still wanted a family to belong to for a lifetime. Or as he put it when he talked to the judge who questioned why he wanted to go through the formality of adoption, he said, "Your Honor, with all due respect, I hope to have children one day, and I'd like them to have grandparents." So this is our family in 1989, and JD is the one on the end holding our youngest son, Todd. And so on that day, we set out for New York. Now, I had asked him to be my co-pilot not only because he had a driver's license and could help with the driving, but to have some one-on-one mother-son bonding time. So he was starting the drive, and he got us through Vermont and Massachusetts and into Connecticut, where the plan was for me to take over shortly after Hartford and do the rest of the driving. We had been having wonderful conversation along the way, and as we were driving into Connecticut, just before we were going to switch roles, we were discussing deeply whether Luther Vandross is the greatest singer of all time or not, when at that exact moment, we noticed the unmistakable red and blue flashing lights behind us. We were being pulled over. I couldn't imagine why. JD was a safe, careful driver. But he definitely took the car to the side of the road. He put down the driver's side window. He carefully took out his license and waited. And when the officer came to the window, he said, "Do you know why I've asked you to stop?" And my very respectful and calm and brave son just said, "No, sir, I'm sorry, I do not." And the cop said, "You were speeding. Get out of the car, both of you." So we got out of the car, and I took the registration papers as we got out, and we were baffled because even though he might have been going 2, 3, 4 miles above the speed limit all day long, cars had been whizzing by us much faster than we were. How was it that we were the ones that got stopped? Unless... So just as soon as that unless occurred to me, I pulled myself up to my full 4 feet 11 inch height, and I took my registration in my hand and I shook my fist at that police officer and I said, "What made you pull us over?" I pointed to the out-of-state plates on our car and I said, "Was it the color of my license plate?" Or I pointed to my son and said, "Or was it the color of his skin?" And I was, of course, proud of myself for standing up for my son. I have to tell you, I honestly to this day do not remember what happened in the next 5 minutes, or 10, or 30, or however long it was until we were somehow miraculously back in our car moving down the road again. JD's still driving. I had no idea the reign of terror that I had unleashed for him. I had no idea that he was in full-blown fight-or-flight mode at that moment, as he gripped the steering wheel and kept his eyes on the road, but hissed at me, "Don't you ever do that to me again. You could have gotten me arrested or killed." That was was more than 30 years ago. And it was one of my first really in-my-face, up-close, personal moments of encountering that collision of white privilege and systemic racism. It was not anywhere near the last, however. And over the years since then, my sons, my daughters, my grandsons now, granddaughters, have faced those moments, those terrifying moments, those wounding moments, those deeply humiliating moments again and again. When one of my sons was told by the mother of a young lady he asked on a date, "No one like you is going to take my daughter to the prom." And when another one of my sons was pulled over and frisked and held at gunpoint for having the audacity to park in the wrong neighborhood. And then another one pulled aside and questioned and accused of kidnapping for walking his own 2 little daughters through the mall. Their skin was lighter than his. It seems like it'll never end. When will it end? But more importantly, how will it end? I keep asking myself that, and one thing I've learned over the years is you can't get over something without getting through it. And so we have these hard conversations at our dinner tables, but it's also what I do for work, and I facilitate hard conversations with people unlikely to be together in the same room if we weren't creating the space for it. I bring together families of people who are incarcerated with families of people who are victims of gun violence. And I bring together indigenous people with modern day cowboys, and I bring together gay and transgender people with church leaders, and I bring together children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of slaves, along with grandchildren and great-grandchildren of slave owners. And we have these conversations. And we have them at our table too. And so one day I was working, getting ready for one of those conversations and putting my material together. And 2 of my little granddaughters were with me, a 6-year-old and an 11-year-old. And so I was showing them some of the slides that I was going to be using, and I showed them this, and I was trying to explain what these words mean, and then showed them this one, and the 6-year-old looked at the one on the end as we were talking about them, and she said, "That one there, that liberation one, Nana, is that the good one?" And I said, yes, that's what we're trying to get to. She shook her little head. She said, "Nana, there may not be a fence in that one, but they're still on the outside." She said, "They need to be inside the field watching. They need to be inside the field with everyone else, like this." And so then, I was proud of her too, but then the 11-year-old said, but wait, they're still just watching, they're not really participating, they need to be playing the game with everyone else, like this. And so she drew that picture. And that's when the 6-year-old, not to be outdone, said, wait. And she was drawing away this beautiful picture that had nothing to do with a ball field. And she had flowers, and she had people of all races, and she had animals, because she's an animal lover, and balloons and rainbows and all kind of stuff in her picture. And she said, "Nana, the real good one would be when it's not a game where some people win and some people lose. The real good one is when we take all of that away and we have this." And she showed us her picture. Now, I'm not showing you her picture now. I'm asking you to create your own. What would be your vision? What would be your picture of hope if we could have a world where we took away all the structures that create barriers and oppression and racism? What if you could be like my 6-year-old granddaughter and create that vision? Because we're not going to get to the hope and the healing and the restoration until we have vision. It has been said that without vision, people perish. So I ask you to think about, what would you put here? What would your vision be? This is mine. This is our family now. And our oldest son, JD, he did have children, and they do have grandparents. And the grandchildren and even the great-grandchildren are the ones that give me hope. And because of those words of my little 6-year-old and 11-year-old granddaughters, I have hope to share with you today. And I have the ability to stand here and say, together, still we rise.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sue. Thank you very, very much. If I may make an editorial note here for Stacy. Next year, or 2024, whenever you decide to do this again, we're gonna put this podium over there. Right now, we have our speaker, who is a beauty industry CEO. This girl did it herself. And I'm really proud to introduce Brianna Williams.
I like to say that I live a life of bold insecurity. And that was a term that I coined for myself many years ago, and I'll soon tell you why. But I was honored when Stacy had me come here today to share my story with all of you all. And I initially asked myself, why me? What's so special about my story? And I thought to myself, a lot of times that's what many of us do when it comes to our own journey, and acknowledging that powerful moment that shifted everything for us and ultimately shaped the people that we become, the things that we want in life, the things that we want to accomplish. And so I thought long and hard. I said, well, what do I want to share with this group? And immediately I said, one of the biggest accomplishments most recently has been creating and launching my own beauty brand, Lip Love Line, which I've grown to love very, very much. But in reality, it's much bigger than that, right? It started a long time ago in my youth as a young Black girl. And I faced many very real circumstances in life, with my health, with my mindset, with my surroundings, all of it cultivating and impacting the woman that I am today. And as a young girl, I was fearless. A little girl who loved Barney. I had the biggest imagination. I was always outside playing, a lot of times by myself. Climbing trees. My granny said I always came in the house smelling like a dog. I loved to do any and everything. I went to the library. I'd read 10 books a week. I would just enjoy truly being a child and enjoy myself and my own company in that way. And then I remember when my light started to dim a little bit. I started to let the world dictate what I wanted to be, how I wanted to look, how I should feel. And I remember having a crisis as a child about my own identity, not knowing who I wanted to be anymore. And I started to eat that emotion, literally. And by the age of 13, I had reached 200 pounds. And I remember feeling not enough. I remember hating myself. I remember going into the doctor's office all the time, so much to the this day, I do not like going to the doctors. I remember I hated looking myself in the mirror. I hated going to shop for new clothes. I did not like undressing in the gym room with my classmates. I did not enjoy myself. I did not feel beautiful. I was not comfortable in my own skin. And that was a drastic change from the young girl who was fearless, who felt beautiful in her own skin, who could go out and do anything in the world that she wanted. And I realized how many young women were facing that on a daily basis, and how when we look at different media and TV and music videos, especially when I was younger, I didn't see myself. And so I often compared myself to those things. And it took a long time for me to kind of change that mindset. But ultimately, I worked through that. I remember the first time my mom bought me my very first lip gloss set. I was 13, the same age at which I had reached that highest weight. And I remember how much confidence and personality that it gave me. It was a lip gloss set, right? It may sound silly, it may not seem like a big deal, but to me it was fancy, it was Lancome, it was squeeze tubes with sheer glossy colors, suitable for a young lady, but it was special and it made me feel special. And when I wore it, I had this confidence that I could show up and I could be myself and I could show my personality and I could be comfortable in my own skin. And again, it was lip gloss that did this for me. And so it just shows the power of a moment. And in that moment, I had a dream. And I said, you know, how cool would it be if one day I started my own lip gloss company? And then I remembered, also growing up, always seeing my granny, who just happened to recently turn 90 years old, and she is sassy as ever, sit at her vanity set and always apply her makeup and her lipstick. And to this day, she's the only woman that I know who can put on red lipstick flawlessly without looking in a mirror. And if that's not skill, I don't know what it is. And it's those two moments in my childhood that I remember that really ultimately shaped some of the things that I wanted in the future. But what I want to say is that I didn't live my life chasing this dream. This dream somehow chased and found me and manifested its way into my life. And I think that is so powerful because ultimately, I launched Lip Love Line 2 years ago at a moment in my life where I just felt lost and I wanted to do something I was passionate about. And I asked myself, what is that one thing you would do if you were able to do it and nobody was in your way and you just had the ability to do it? And I said, you know what? I had a dream when I was a young girl that I would have my own beauty brand. I would make my own lip gloss. And I had the opportunity to bring that to life. There was a competition locally where I could submit an idea or a business idea or a product, and I submitted a health-conscious lip care beauty brand. But the one thing that I wanted to make sure of, aside from creating lip products, which I loved, was that I wanted to, at the core, celebrate young girls and women who felt like me. I wanted to make sure that I inspired them to accept themselves for who they were. I wanted them to embrace their own natural beauty. And I wanted them to feel comfortable in their own skin. And again, 2 years later, here I am, and I've launched Lip Love Line. You know, it's been a journey, it's been a rewarding journey, it's been a challenging journey. But again, going back to that young girl and being able to sit there and say, and recognize that I've more than fulfilled that dream at this very point in my life, and I still am only at the very beginning. And it's such a big deal because a lot of us have these dreams and they're built out of our past lives, and we've never tried to truly move forward with them. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think it's important for us to recognize that our journeys are connected to our purpose, and our purpose in lives help to connect with others. And the amount of connection and support and love that I've received to be able to bring Love Line to life, and to be featured in Essence magazine, and to be featured in Bustle, and on national and local publications, and to receive grant money from individuals and organizations that see and connect to my vision and my mission, to me astounds me now as a woman. But how proud would I be as that young little girl, knowing that that was once a dream that came out of a moment where I was at my lowest. And so I say all of that to say that if I leave you with anything right now, is that dreams are not only worth dreaming, but they are worth living. Even if you have to step out of your comfort zone and be vulnerable and stand on a stage with bold insecurity and tell your story. Thank
you so much. I mean, all these stories have inspired me so much, even more. Well, I was a little girl born in Brooklyn, New York, in the Brownsville section, and I'm the eldest of 5 children, and we had a mother and father in a 2-bedroom apartment. So I came from very meager means, but during that time, I had a mother and a father who were determined that their children would become something. And education was the most important thing. And the other most important thing was sharing us with museums, going to museums, teaching us dancing, music, things like that. They always taught us this. My father always said, what's around you does not have to be in you. And so, you know, as I grew up, I realized that there was a beauty pageant. And I was about 15 years old, and my mother, of course, didn't have a lot of money, but I wanted to be in this beauty pageant. So she said, Bern, you want to be in this beauty pageant? I said, yes, it's for teenagers. I want to be in the beauty pageant. I lived in Brooklyn, and it was in Manhattan. So, of course, my mother said, okay, are you sure? I said, yeah, I'm sure. I begged her, she said, okay. That meant she had to take all of my brothers and sisters and myself to Manhattan every single weekend. Every Sunday for 7 weeks. All the way up, we trotted all the way up there, did the rehearsal, trotted all the way back. I guess that was very challenging for my mom. But the weekend that the pageant was, the very last weekend, like the 7th week, I got up that morning and I looked in the mirror and I talked to myself. And what I said was, get real. You're not gonna win. You never won anything else. Come on. I talked to myself to the point where I decided I was not gonna go. And so when my mother came to me and she said, okay, come on, we gotta go, it's about that time, you know, we gotta go. I said, Mom, I have something to tell you. She said, what? I said, I'm not going. Well, that didn't go over well. Not at all. She said, you know what? I said, I'm not going. She said, oh yes, you are. She said, you better put your clothes on and hurry up. We gotta get there. And I'm like, I'm not going. And I moved like molasses. And everybody was ready, and here I am still, you know, carrying on. And she paid me no mind. And we walked all the way to the subway, and it takes an hour to get to Manhattan, okay? So I made sure I didn't sit next to her. I moved all the way over, and I sat down. And she's acting like she doesn't see me. And I mean nothing. So I said, I'll fix her. I sat there and mustered up an asthma attack. Oh yeah, you can do it. All you gotta do, if you do have asthma somewhere down there, all you have to do is just wheeze. You just have to hold your breath and wheeze, like, until you catch a wheeze. I caught my wheeze, and I said, I got her now. So we got to 34th Street, everybody's getting off the subway, Mommy gets off the subway, and here I am. She said, what's wrong with you? I said, I got asthma. I can't do it. You know, mothers know their children. She looked at me and she said, Bernadette, there's a drugstore on the way. We're gonna get that Primatine mist. You're gonna take it. And you're gonna get up on that stage, you hear me? I'm like, oh yeah. So I got the Primatine mist, I took it, and I can't get around this lady, so I've gotta get up there. So I finally get up on stage, and she looked at me and like, you know, that look where, don't you mess up, girl. You better do it right. And I got up there and and did my dancing, did my this, did my that. You know, I wasn't gonna mess up there. And so it was that Sunday that a manager came over to my mom, and she said, it was a he said, you know, we have a TV series that we have teenagers, and your daughter looks like she could fit right in there. You know, at that time I had the big old afro, the whole 70s. So I said, so Mommy said, okay, fine, yeah. And so he gave her a card, and it was for CBS, to go up to CBS and audition for this show. So the next day, we went up to CBS, and we walked into the room, and I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe, you know, it's, you know, they wanted me, I don't know, you know. So I walk into the room, and there are thousands of girls. I mean, so many. I'm like, oh man, what's this? So I'm like, I'm not gonna act up. So I sat down, and I was nervous, and I kept thinking, oh, this is just not gonna work, but I can't tell my mother that. So I sat down, and I started remembering what my dad would always say. He would say, what's for you is for you, and no one can take it from you. And I kept saying that in my head. So then when they called me in for the audition, I go in there and I see Norman Lear and Jimmy Walker. Norman was sitting down and Jimmy was standing up, and they had these two dumb hats on their heads. Norman had a big white hat and Jimmy had that dumb blue hat. So I'm like, oh God, okay. So I go up there and they give me the script, and I look at the script, and I'm looking at the script, and I'm like, we don't talk like that. You know, black girls from the ghetto do not talk like that. So I figured it was like maybe some older white guys that thought we talked like that wrote the script. So I said, you know, Mr. Leah, can I improvise? And he looked at me like, oh Lord, yes, go ahead, improvise. So I went up there and I said to JJ, look JJ, you better help me clean this house before Mommy gets here. You better help me wash the dishes, do something. And he's looking at me like, you know how you look. And I said, and I pushed him. He kept, what? And he came back at me, and we had Norman cracking up. Okay, cracking up. I said, this is how I treat my brothers. I don't know how everybody treats their brothers in the ghetto, but this is what I do with my brothers. And plus, I'm the oldest one. Huh? So anyway, but this time I'm the middle child. He's the oldest, but I still treated him like he was the youngest. But anyway, that's kind of what I think won me that part. But what I wanted to say about that is this. If I had not gone there, okay, I learned that don't let fear stop you from walking into your destiny. Because Truly Good Times was my destiny. And I had talked myself into that fear, and without the faith and the strength of my mother and God, you would not be sitting there looking at Thelma from Good Times, the first black female teenager ever on television.
You never know when your opportunity is staring you in the face. Thank you, Bernadette. That was Bernadette Stanis, as you saw. She's a veteran actress and she's an author as well. And she'll be signing her books out in the next room right after we get through. And now I would like to bring up here my friend, my collaborator, the lady who feeds me sometimes. She can't cook. But her company is worth the effort. So I'll be teaching her to cook, and she'll be teaching me to write. I would like to bring up our leader, Miss Stacy Hawkins Adams.
Thank you, Daphne. I'm just glad she's still my friend after I served her frozen key lime pie. And my son can cook, so I'm okay, I'm safe. Wow. All I can say is wow, wow, wow to the wonderful women at my table. We've already thanked Robert. But the stories you've heard, like I said earlier, I hope that it has given you the courage to reflect on your own journey, to think about how to overcome the fear, to look in the mirror and learn how to love yourself, to realize that we are each other's keeper, all of those wonderful things. And I say that to bring us to this moment where I have to remind you all and myself, as I've had to do throughout this year, that our stories are constantly and always being written. And that whatever season we're in is a season where it's being written. So I'm going to share some things with you, so I need you all to participate as I get to a certain part of it. But I will start by being honest with you and letting you know, as Beth said, we planned this event. We had our first conversation in the summer of 2021. It was August 2021. Still, the pandemic is still kind of going on, and she and the executive director, we were trying to plan when we would do this. And so, just like seemingly the rest of America, because this is my homecoming weekend at Jackson State and a few other colleges, October 22nd, 2022. That's a good date. And we thought we'd be past the pandemic. So this is how we landed on this date. And so I began planning with my co-organizers in September of 2021. Danica and Tawana, thank you ladies for joining me in that. So we've been planning for over a year. My vision had been to stand with you on this stage at this moment and tell you all what many of you all have been asking me for about 6 years now. I was going to be able to tell you that I had finished the book, and I had a title, and I had a cover to show you, and we were going to all stand and cheer. That's what Stacy had planned. But our stories are still being written, right? And so that is not what this season gave me. This is my birthday of this year, mid-January 2022, at one of my favorite restaurants. I was dining with friends, had great visions for what this year was going to hold. About a week before this, I had a wonderful conversation with an editor for a publishing house in New York that I was very excited to work with. And I got off the call with her, I had told her about the book that's in progress, I am writing, told her what the plot was, what the theme was, my estimated time of finishing it was going to be March of 2022. And once we finished that call, I called my agent, he was excited, we talked about the possibilities. I looked at my calendar, I told Charvette Mitchell I couldn't edit this year's book that she was working on, and I pulled back from some other obligations because I was going to go into the writing cave and focus on this book and finish the manuscript by March 2021, at least the ugly first draft. You have many revisions, but I was going to get that ugly first draft done. But then life happened. So I'm going to share with you all what happened But you all have to promise to remember this phrase. Stacy is okay. Repeat it with me. Stacy is okay. So when we leave here today and you share any part of my story, you're going to say what? Stacy is okay. Very good. Because a week after my birthday, I started to have headaches. And I had a headache every single day from January until May of this year. And I do mean every single day. So on January 16th or 17th, I started to have the headaches. And I went to see my doctor. And on January 31st of this year, I received a diagnosis that I had a pituitary tumor. Yes, that is a brain tumor. And my doctor said to me, you will likely have to have surgery to have this tumor removed. And so life came to a halt. Mind you, I'm still dealing with the headaches, and now I have this somewhat shocking diagnosis. And along with the headaches came quite a bit of fatigue. And I will say the blessing in this is, first of all, wonderful doctors. Because I stand here now, months later, with 3 neurosurgeons, 2 neurologists, an endocrinologist, my primary care doctor, and an ophthalmologist that are very good friends of mine. I've gotten to know them very well this year, and they've done an excellent job of helping me manage my care. But I will also say to you that they're from all 4 hospital systems in the city. So guess who had to be the quarterback of the team? Me. I had to advocate for myself and make sure that everybody was talking to each other, that I was making sure that the recommendation they were given was going to be perfect for me and my 4'11" body and my mindset. So that was one blessing. The other blessing is that the headaches, for the most part, were low grade. And to me, that means they were a level of 2 or 3. So I could work most days. And so I would go to work and I would come home and I would rest. And I would go to work and I would come home and I would rest. And finally, I got to the point, thankfully, about a month into the diagnosis where they determined that I was not going to have the surgery. And so, thank you. And with that, we were just trying to figure out, okay, is the tumor doing anything? Is it causing the headaches? What's causing the headaches? So I wasn't able to write because you can't sit in front of a computer and write. I did it during the workday. I couldn't do it after work and sit in front of a computer and write all day. But what I was able to do was to make the decision that, as our friend Brianna said, sometimes your purpose calls you to things that are greater than you, and I knew that I still wanted to have this event. And so I said, well, if I'm gonna have a little bit of energy in between the headaches, I'm gonna move forward with planning this event. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this was because on my birthday, I had my whole year planned. I knew I was going to have this book done. I was going to stand here with all this fabulous news. And what I learned during the season, when I could not write, when I had to give into the headaches, when I sat on my sofa, sometimes in tears, or laid in my bed and rested like my body needed, what I learned was sometimes we have to surrender to the season. We have to surrender to the season that life calls us to. And as one of my spiritual leaders told me, this was my season of holy pause. And in addition to learning to pause and rest in the season, I learned so many other beautiful things. I learned that we're not what we do. Because I've been a writer since I was 5 years old. And for me to not be able to write, whether it was to finish the book or a blog post or some days a social media post, I had to shift my identity. So my identity was not what I did. My identity and my purpose is who I'm called to be. I'm called to be an encourager. I'm called to be a truth teller. I'm called to be authentic in all ways. And that was something I could still do even as I walked through this difficult season. So if any of you follow me on social media, you'll see that I posted pictures between January and May. They were all very authentic. Those were the days I was feeling good. I even did some TikTok reels. Those were the days I was feeling good. But in between those days, that's where the rest came in, and the visits to the doctors, and the medicine. The other thing I've learned, which is also something I want to share with you, is that sometimes we don't know what's going on with other people, and we have to grant them grace to walk through their seasons as they need to. I have many friends in this room who are hearing this for the very first time. And they might be like, why didn't she tell me? Why, I would have been there for her. By me not telling you, you actually were there for me. Because sometimes when people are walking through a difficult season, they just need to show up as themselves. If I came to your birthday party, or had a conversation with you, or went to a meal with you, or whatever we did, and if I didn't bring it up, you were giving me the opportunity to just be Stacy on that day. And I thank you for that. But I also thank the small group, including my beautiful children, who walked through this season with me, who were my prayer partners through this season with me, who sometimes I couldn't send an email or make a Facebook post or reach out to my writers group or whatever was going on. I did have a small band that I leaned on. And sometimes they didn't understand why I couldn't talk through it, because it was my holy pause. I needed to experience it. I needed to see what life's lessons were supposed to be teaching me through this season. And the third thing I want you to think about, which also goes back to what I was saying about those Facebook pictures and all the fabulosity you might have seen, that's very real too. Because you have to ask yourself, how do I want my story to be written? What do I want my story to be? This picture was taken from one of my sweet nephew's wedding about a month and a half ago, about 6 weeks ago. And I was trying to show up as the fabulous auntie. But in that picture, I actually have a headache at a level of a 5 that evening. But you know what? I still danced the night away because it was my nephew's wedding and I wanted to make an active choice to celebrate and be in a space of joy with him. And so when you're going through those seasons, think about how you get through those seasons. How do you decide your story how do you want that story to be written? On the night of my diagnosis, January 31st, 2022, amid my tears, amid the shock, I pulled out my phone and I opened my Apple iTunes and I created a playlist called Overcomer. And every song that I could think of that would empower me, I put it on there. And in the mornings, I listened to my Overcomer playlist. And at bedtime, I listened to my Overcomer playlist. And if I needed it throughout the day, I played that playlist. So whatever you need to do to get through your season, you do that to get through your season. And I will say that everybody's season is different. Thankfully, I stand here before you where the doctors have determined that I don't need the surgery. As I mentioned, I have what's called a non-functioning pituitary tumor, which means that we're just gonna watch it and hopefully it'll stay silent and mind its own business. And those 2 neurologists have gotten me on some medicine that I can function on. I don't have a headache today. That's great, right? And so there's hope and sight that maybe we'll get to the point where I won't have the headaches. And in the meantime, I'm writing again. I'm halfway finished with this book. But whatever your season is, I will say, in a room of 150 people, October happens to be Pituitary Awareness Month. That's how I know God has a sense of humor. Because when I started researching this surgery that I thought I was going to have back in early February, at that point, I stumbled upon it. I was like, oh, he knows I'm hosting this brunch, and he wants me to talk about Pituitary Awareness Month? Well, okay. So 1 in 10 people around the world have pituitary tumors. So in a room of 150 people, 14 other people in here probably have one. You may have had or be about to have surgery. You may be treating it with medicine, or you may never know because it can be non-functioning and not bother you. The headaches led them to discover mine. But the headaches also helped me to discover this season of surrender, the season of holy pause, the season of realizing that we are not what we do, but who we're called to be, the season of realizing that we have to be our own quarterback of our own team, and the season of realizing that our stories are always being written, constantly being written. And as they're being written, we can live it out with joy. We can dance sometimes through the pain, but it's okay to practice the self-care and rest when you need to also. And I want to leave you with this poem, and I'll say I'm not a poet like Robert. He got up here. I made him memorize his, y'all. So he was mad at me yesterday when he saw that I had notes. But I'm not a poet. But early in December of 2021, one morning I got up, a typical time frame to work on my novel, and this poem poured out of me a whole month before the diagnosis. And I want to share this because I don't think it's just a poem for me. I think it's a poem for all of you all, and I'm going to recite it for you. She swayed, she pirouetted, she arched, she leaned, she bowed, She was all things to all people and had been forever, without pause, without reason, without question. And then came the plague. It stalled and eventually stopped her perpetual performances and curtain calls. It silenced her deafening busyness. It killed people she knew or knew of, and many she had never met. It choked her already submerged hopes and dreams. It splintered her heart until one day she woke up and decided to pivot and discover what this season of darkness could teach her. She chose to flow with the unwelcome wind rather than resist it, to stare into the chasm of fear rather than shield her eyes. She arched, she leaned, she bowed, she broke open and taught herself a new way to dance. With the truth, through the pain, around the obstacles, she watched others show up for others and slow down for themselves, and she scraped together enough mindfulness and curiosity about what could be to do the same. She pivoted towards something daring, vulnerability, humble strength, and wholeness, toward being seen in her blackness and in her womanhood and in her richness of heritage. She pivoted toward greater hope and deeper love and courageous letting go, softened by tender goodbyes. She pivoted toward the mirror day after day after day, speaking with clarity and with compassion into the tentative eyes staring back at her, and consistently declared, I see you, I will honor you. She pivoted and she conquered, and out of those initially commonplace, comfortable, and monotonous dances arose a fresh vision and an imaginative routine that is still unfolding and beckoning her into unchoreographed spaces. She continues to heal, reclaim her hope and her time, and embrace a looming season that brims with promise. A new pair of shoes and a reborn sense of self are empowering her to keep dancing, growing, pivoting. She is me, she is you, she is we who are overcoming. Beautiful. Thank you. I invite you all to remember, Stacy is okay. Keep dancing and keep pivoting. Your future is victorious. Thank you.
I want you to think about all that you've heard today. Think about your own life. Think about the stories you need to tell. Write them down. Tell them. We all need to hear your story.